like you're saying that it's pro wrestling. That's true. But let me tell you, and I'm being completely honest when I say this. This isn't like for the show, and this isn't like just to enhance it. He's like an asshole. Like, he's not a good guy.
Yeah. What's up, Bengal fans? It's your host, Joey Karni. I want to thank you for clicking on this video. It was an amazing experience, and I can't wait for you to see the full interview. Now, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below your favorite part at the end of the video. Now, enjoy the show.
Oh, wrestling fans! Don't you dare be sour! Clap for the Angle Podcast and feel the power! Ladies and gentlemen, the Angle proudly presents the world's most talked about pro wrestling sensation. It's the Angle Podcast. How exciting!
What's up, Bengal fans? It's your host, Joey Karni. I'm here with a guest who I've been longing to have on this show for quite some time. He's the host of Busted Open. He's the leader of the Busted Open Nation, Dave LaGreca. How are you, sir?
What's going on? How are you? I haven't shaved, so I look a little gruff.
Yeah, I got a haircut today for the first time in since February, so I feel like a brand new person.
The pandemic has wreaked havoc on me, so.
I hear you. So speaking of the pandemic, how are you holding up? How are you doing, really?
I'm good. I mean, luckily, me and my family are healthy and happy, so that's the main concern. And I'm able to do the show from home. So, the Busted Open hasn't skipped a beat. We missed just one day, March 12th, because of everything that was happening, but we went right back on the air March 13th, and we've been rolling ever since.
Well, that was kind of lead me into my next question: is how has Busted Open really adjusted to what's going on? You said everybody's working from home. I mean, how does that affect you? Not being in the studio.
It's not as tough of a transition as I thought it was going to be. I mean, Bully and Mark, they did the show from home anyway. So they were rarely in studio. Tommy would come in studio, and I kind of miss doing the show one-on-one with Tommy on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's fine with this new, tech and with Zoom. It's like you and I doing the interview here today. Exactly. It's just like this. I sit in my living room, and I do the show, so it's been fine.
Yeah, before this all happened, I mean, I was out at wrestling events in February doing, live interviews with different wrestlers, and to have this transition to doing, Zoom calls now, like what we're doing. I mean, for me, it took a little adjustment because it's not the same as to have that one-on-one, physical connection with somebody, just like you guys would have on the show. How has that affected you really having your guests on the show? Well, now having to call in or Zoom.
Yeah, you know what? It's even better because most of our guests have been over the phone. And we were lucky to have a lot of guests in studio, if the WWE was in town and things of that nature, where we would have guests in studio. And also we did a lot of remotes too. We went out to WrestleMania. That I missed. That,
yeah.
Like our annual WrestleMania parties with the nation, that, I missed that immensely, and there's nothing that can match those things. But as far as guests, it's actually better now because, hey, if you're able to do it on your phone from home, you can open up your laptop and do it on Zoom. So it's actually been a lot better with guests than it was even when we were in New York doing it from our studios.
Exactly. I kind of feel the same way because before I started doing the Zoom calls, before the pandemic, I felt it was kind of harder for me, at least, starting a new show, to get guests on. Now, everybody being remote, I've had, a lot of success with people saying yes and coming on the show. I mean, during this pandemic, it's really, in a way, worked to my benefit for this. So how has that affected people coming on your show? I mean, and you have, one of the biggest shows in the world for pro wrestling. Have you had more people try to get on the show more than normal, or how does that go about?
Yeah, and I think, like, I've always been somebody who's really backed up the entire wrestling community. I like to promote other avenues. I've never been guarded and said, well, Busted Open's the best show, so like every other show, I'm not going to give them. Why would I give them time on our show to promote themselves? I've never been like that, and I don't really like to work with people that are like that. I really think our community is a very small community, and I think there's strength in numbers. So I like coming on your show. I think that's great for everyone, because at some point, I'm going to need you as much as you need me, and I think that's really worked to our advantage. So I think when it comes to even guest booking, it's getting creative. Like, hey, let's work together. Having Conrad on the show this past Friday, and JR has been such a great believer in our show, and we promote one another. So I think when it comes to times like this, when we're all at home and we're trying to strengthen ourselves, because it's very, very difficult to do so, I think that's where that loyalty to one another really shines.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been any problem getting guests on or getting people to come on, because they know, hell, let me promote Busted Open, because, Busted Open will promote me. I think the best evidence of that was from AEW Fighter Fest last night, where JR, the Private Party comes on. JR's mentioning the interview that we had with Private Party earlier that day. I thought that was awesome. Now, I didn't need Jericho calling me a dummy, but other than, but I love that, because JR knows that I'm going to do the same for him. So I think that shows how strong our community is.
I do tend to agree with that. And that is part of, I think, a big reason why everyone on your show, including yourself, have so much respect within the community, because people know that, and they kind of see that authenticity. And, you're setting the example, and everybody's trying to follow in that sort of footstep. So, for me, I thank you for that. I thank you for coming on the show. And to what you're saying about, JR saying that with AEW, you could say the same. I mean, with Stone Cold's Broken Skull show with Mark Henry, the first thing out of their mouth was Busted Open. First couple of minutes was about Busted Open. I thought that was really cool when I saw that. How did you feel about, that? Because I know they kind of stinged you out on the bump and everything. So
but Stone Cold's been another great advocate for the show, because Busted Open's been around for over 11 years now. So we kind of predate a lot of the podcasts that are out there right now. So I had Stone Cold on, and listen, you're never going to say no to Stone Cold Steve Austin, but we had Stone Cold on right when he started the podcast. So I had him on Busted Open to promote his podcast. He never forgot that. So like, he always, whenever it comes to Mark or Bully, whenever he mentions them, he always, mentions me and mentions the show. So I think that's another example. I think that gives a great advantage to Busted Open, is that our tenure and how long the show's been around. Over 11 years is a long time. And I know the struggle that it took to get our show on the air. So I know that a lot of struggles for a lot of podcasts and stuff to get noticed. Like, so I'll never have a problem throwing a shout out or being a guest, because, those big superstars did the same for me. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
That's awesome. I didn't know that's kind of how, it worked with Stone Cold. That's actually really cool. I didn't know that. I kind of want to go back or start talking about, you mentioned, how you are from where you are today, people helping you get to where you are. How did you really break out into this field, creating Busted Open? I know you were with Sirius for a while. How did that all, start for you?
Well, I've been in radio for a long time. I worked in New York radio, especially, for a very long time. And then it was through my work with New York radio, especially WFAN, which is a local New York sports channel. Steve Cohen, who worked there and I worked with, he became the sports director at Sirius XM. So he brought me in when he started the NFL channel, because I was a huge NFL fan. So I've been with Sirius now for 16 years.
Wow.
And almost immediately I was pitching a pro wrestling show. And it took a long time just to green light it. And then it took a long time for it to get the platform and the spotlight that it has now. Because it was once a week for an hour. And then it grew to twice a week and then 3 times a week. And now where it is six days a week. So it was a gradual kind of organic growth for the show from where it started to where it is now. And we kind of build, and my original broadcast partner was Doug Mortman. So it was really like a grassroots kind of underground, just getting that up and getting that noticed. And then it really kind of went to another level when Bully Ray and then Mark Henry and Tommy Dreamer came on. Mark Henry's been a fan of the show since day one.
Yeah.
You know, he tells the story all the time that, you know, he heard one of our first ever shows and he was a fan. So it's always great having and finding out who these fans are of your show, because at the time there were no wrestling shows. So, you know, it was great to see that growth. And now for it to be my career and be my only outlet in radio is definitely a gift. And to see how much pro wrestling has grown in the last 11 years, because it really has. Because when we started in 2009, that wasn't like really a golden era of pro wrestling. And I really think that right now we are, even during this pandemic, it's really dynamic on how much it's grown in the last few years.
Exactly. I mean, if you look back 2009, what other company? I mean, I think at the time TNA was around. You had
TNA was around, yeah.
Now, I mean, you have multiple, and the indies are being considered, you know, top level too. So I do agree with that there is, you know, so many opportunities for fans. You know, if they don't like WWE, if they don't like AEW, well, guess what? You have Impact, you have Ring of Honor, you have New Japan. I think that's, like you said, a great dynamic, opposed to, you know, what we had in 2009. There is something that I want to bring up, because I've tweeted to you for like over a year now. And it was something that I was like, this has to be the craziest thing. And even when I tell you this, you're not even going to believe this. So I know you're a huge advocate for New Jersey. You said on the show, you know, Fairlawn, things like that. I too am from New Jersey. And I live here currently, and I live in Fairlawn.
Oh,
so,
get out of here. You live in Fairlawn?
I live in Fairlawn, New Jersey.
Well, that probably explains why we're moving out of Fairlawn. We're actually moving out of Fairlawn in 2 weeks. So that explains everything.
Yeah, no, I when I found that out, I was like, no way. Like, this guy that I listen to on radio lives in my town. Like, that's just the craziest thing I've ever. Yeah, so I thought I thought that was pretty cool.
How long have you been in Fairlawn?
I grew up here. My dad actually graduated high school here.
Wow.
Yeah, in like 72 or 73. And, oh no, he was born then in 1990. He graduated from here. And we kind of moved to Oakland, Wyckoff, and then we did a thing to Florida, and then we came back here a year ago, and kind of back to where we all started. So yeah, we've been here for about a year now.
Wow. So your dad and I are about the same age.
Yeah, I asked him too. I'm like, do you know David LaGreca? He's like,
I didn't go because I didn't go to Fairlawn High School. I went to Bosco. I went to Bosco. So I never, and I didn't grow up in Fairlawn. I grew up in Hawthorne.
Gotcha.
So yeah, but like that's pretty wild. So
yeah, you
know, I'm the same age as your dad.
Wow. You know, I thought that was just a crazy thing, because how rare is it that you know, you're a fan of somebody, you listen to their work, and then you find out they live like in the same area as you. Something you really don't expect. So I figured I'll let you know. I thought it was pretty cool.
No, that's awesome. That's cool. It's good to know. Yeah. Sorry I moved it, man. We could have got together.
It's all good. It's all good.
We could have did this. I could have walked down the street. I could have just did it at where you're doing it from. We didn't need to use Zoom.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, and that kind of I kind of want to talk about you know, the Corey Graves beef you had with WrestleMania, because that really stood out to me, and it also stood out to my dad, who's not, you know, he's not a wrestling fan, but he loves to listen to your show. That I will tell you. He listens to your show every day on his way to work. He's a huge fan of the show, but he's not necessarily the biggest wrestling fan. So when we talk about it, he's like, he's talking about New Jersey. He's always, it's a thing with people from New Jersey that, they all have to represent the state. Kind of, how did you feel with the whole thing with WrestleMania? Because I know you've said it on your show before, but kind of, backpedal a little bit. Because I kind of felt the same way you did when I heard it on your show.
Well, I'm kind of like you. I've kind of moved around, but it's always been in New Jersey. I've never left New Jersey, and I'm not going to leave New Jersey. Like, New Jersey to me is, I've always been proud of the fact that I lived in New Jersey. And, and when it comes to anybody anywhere else, if somebody grew up in Ohio or Iowa or, California or New York, like, you're not in the shadows of anything. Like, you're from Ohio, you're from Florida, it's like, but when it comes to Jersey, and that's why even the phrasing pissed me off. Like, for Corey Graves and for Cole or anybody that talked about it in that whole build towards WrestleMania, they said in the shadows of New York City.
I think they changed it at one point. They changed it to that because before they said New York. They didn't say in the shadows. And I think, honestly, it was from what you said on your show that led them to kind of change that, because a lot of people started saying it, on social media, and then they changed it to the shadows of New Jersey or whatever.
It's just what we always get disrespected in New Jersey. Like, everybody, like, when you're a kid, you see New York, you can see New York from New Jersey, you see the skyline. So it's always a dream, to get to New York. And, I know for me, when I first started in the business, was to work in New York City and everything else. But I never disrespected where I was from. And I was always proud of where I was from. And, I don't see any reason why, if you're holding an event here, why you're going to now say that it's not in New Jersey, especially at the Meadowlands. The WWF was always at the Meadowlands. They never said they were in New York when they were at the Meadowlands. It was the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey. When they had WrestleMania 29 here, they didn't say New York. They said New York, New York, New Jersey, because they shared the events. WrestleMania itself was in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And, the Hall of Fame and everything else, was in New York. So I understand the New York, New Jersey. This time around, they weren't mentioning New Jersey at all. Even like the build-up, the narration of WrestleMania 29 was from the governor of New Jersey. Like, I don't know why all of a sudden when it came to WrestleMania 35, it's like they completely just erased New Jersey from the equation altogether. I was really pissed off and upset about that.
Yeah, I was too when they first said it, because I remember when I was a young kid, I used to say, to my parents, why – we used to go to, to Giants games at the Meadowlands. Why is it called the New York Giants? Why are they not called the New Jersey? And they always had to explain to me, well, this is kind of how they market it.
Well, no, even that I understand, because the Giants were originally from New York, and the Jets were originally from New York. The Giants originally had their games at Yankee Stadium, and the Jets had their games at Shea Stadium. So, like, I understand it. And New York is so close to New Jersey that I understand them not changing their names. But when whether it's Fox or CBS, when they show the game, they say they're in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Yeah. They never say on the shadows of New York City. Like, I was really upset at that. So that really, really bothered me.
No, I felt the same way. And a lot of people that I know who are wrestling fans kind of felt the same way too. Like, it wasn't just you, it wasn't just me. It was like a rally of people from this area. And I think like what I said before, they changed the wording of it, in the shadows of whatever they marketed it as, because a lot of people
and look at all the WrestleManias that there have been in New Jersey. The early WrestleManias from Atlantic City, and now the two WrestleManias from MetLife Stadium. There's a rich tradition of pro wrestling in New Jersey. Really, I think, the best indie scene in wrestling is the indie scene in New Jersey. I think we have a very thriving indie scene. So there is a rich tradition, whether it's, the indies in Union, New Jersey, or like the Meadowlands, all those years. And even now, like in Newark at the Rock, there has been a lot of major events, SummerSlams, WrestleManias, that's been in New Jersey.
No, I tend to agree with that. And I know you're a fan of 80s wrestling, or that golden era of wrestling. How did you really become a fan of pro wrestling?
Well, I mean, it's funny that we're talking so much about East Coast and New Jersey. I first fell in love with pro wrestling by watching Georgia Championship Wrestling on TBS. You know, in the early '80s, there was the boom of cable TV, and my family was lucky enough to get cable TV really early on in the late '70s. So I got turned on to pro wrestling from a lot of the access channels. I was able to watch Georgia Championship Wrestling, and then I soon discovered, you know, championship wrestling from Florida and world-class championship wrestling, Polynesian Pacific Championship Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. So because of cable TV, I got exposed to all these wrestling shows. But the first ever wrestling show I had ever seen was on a Saturday, and that was Georgia Championship Wrestling at my buddy's house, NWA. So I was always a hardcore NWA fan. I didn't get into the WWF, even though it was East Coast based, until a couple of years later.
Gotcha. And kind of forwarding to where we are today, because I know on your show you guys talk about really everything, every company. What do you see as being your most, where you're most invested right now in regards to the different companies that are out there?
I love NWA, and they seem to be on hold right now, and there's a lot of controversy around the NWA, and, you know, they weren't really filming anything right now because of the pandemic. But I really loved NWA Power. I love MLW. I'm a big fan of MLW. I think Impact Wrestling over the last 6 months has been fantastic, and I love AEW and NXT. Like, you know, those shows are my favorite shows. Monday Night Raw is a tough watch. SmackDown could be a tough watch, but, you know, to me, Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Saturdays, I love those days for pro wrestling. Yep. And you're right, as you said at the beginning of the interview, like, there's so many options out there, and all the options are different. You know, if you love Monday Night Raw, that's awesome. There's nothing like Monday Night Raw, and there's nothing like NXT or AEW. Like in 2009, when we started the show, it seemed like everybody was trying to be like the WWE. You mentioned TNA. A lot of times the nickname for that was WWE Light. They were trying to be like the WWE. Now it seems like everyone's trying to be an alternative to Monday Night Raw, which I think is great.
Yeah, it's crazy to see, like you said, everybody trying to almost in a way copy what they were doing, and now trying to be as different as possible from what they're doing. Me personally, I kind of agree with you with what you were saying with NWA. NWA Power was my favorite, you know, show out of everything that we have, you know, currently. Obviously, like you said, they're on hold, and that's where Impact for me right now. I love watching Impact. I get a lot of crap for it online because it's not on regular TV. Same with NWA. People say, "Oh, it's on YouTube. It's not real wrestling." I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. If you love wrestling, you need to check this out. And I'll send links to people, and they're like, "Wow, like this is really good," because it's different than what we see. You know, NWA, you see a lot more of the promo work, you know, being done. There's a lot more storytelling with the words there. Impact Wrestling, I mean, look at who they have on their roster now. I don't know if it's true or not. I was reading reports they got Anderson Gallows signed there. Mm-hmm. They're kind of, you know, portraying that maybe EC3 and, you know, other people, even Slater might end up there at Slammiversary. Even before that, I was invested in this product. There's just a lot going on there that, you know, we know what we're going to get with WWE. And a year into AEW, I kind of feel the same way. I kind of know what we're going to get already with that product. So Impact, you know, bringing in different people from different eras. You know, you see Shamrock with Callahan. Like, I don't know. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and I think too, like AEW is taking a hit because they were used to having shows in front of 10,000 fans. Same thing with Raw and SmackDown, and even NXT had their Full Sail crowd. Impact Wrestling, their shows weren't in front of a lot of people. They didn't have big crowds. So I don't really feel the effects of the crowd not being there at Impact Wrestling. It kind of looks the same as it did before.
Exactly. Yeah, it looks the same.
And what you said too, like you were talking about some of the names that are coming in. That's fine and dandy, But I think like what you said is definitely true in the fact that I'm invested in who they have right now. Like their women's division is with Jordan Grace and Deonna Purrazzo. I love Hogan. I love Tasha Steelz. I've been a big fan of her for a while. And Ace Austin. Like there's some really, really Falaba. Like there's a lot of really good characters and personalities already. So I'm already a fan of Impact. They have me. All these other names, that's great.
Yep.
But I think they've done a great job of taking a lot of unknown talent, making them their own, and really exposing them. And really, it's much watched TV for me on Tuesday nights.
You mentioned Ace Austin. I mean, that guy right now is one of my top picks across the board. The guy is just so entertaining. 23 years old, now he's going to be in the main event at Slammiversary. I don't know if another company with his, character can get him to where he is there.
No, I agree. And then you still have like the Mooses and the Sammy Callahans and the Eddie Edwards that, are kind of known for, outside of what they did recently with Impact. But still, I think, they have a really great, strong roster. And it's kind of, most of it's homegrown. And with all this stuff with Tessa Blanchard and, Tessa Blanchard being let go and even Elgin being let go, like, I don't think it's hurt them at all.
No,
like I really don't. Like, think about that. They just lost their world champion. That would be devastating to a lot of companies. Yep. I don't think it hurt Impact at all.
Well, look at their main event for Slammiversary. I mean, it kind of ruined the main event. You had Tessa and Elgin both in that event. One of my picks for that match was Elgin. So
and they really built Elgin a lot. But what? The match that I'm really more looking forward to that is Deonna Purrazzo and Jordan Grace, because they've done a good job of building that matchup. So I'm really looking forward to Slammiversary. I think Slammiversary is going to be awesome.
Yep. Look at the build for Deonna. I mean, she's only been there on screen maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks now.
That's it.
It's crazy.
But she made her presence known, and then she had just a one match.
Yeah.
But you know what? They've done a good job, and a lot of companies should take note. They did a good job of building her up with those vignettes and like the footage of her being on our show, on Busted Open. I thought they worked that footage in fantastic, and I thought it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of want to talk about what we saw last night at Fyter Fest and the Great American Bash. I know you had Cody on your show, and now he's banned.
Yeah, I still got the presents here, so
I know. But, how was that whole thing with Cody? How do you feel with that whole situation?
Like what? Like Cody on Busted Open, or Cody just? No, Cody. Like Cody, I think Cody understands the importance of Busted Open. Like he understands that our exposure and our platform. And listen, aside from some of the things that you hear on the show, I love Cody. I love his work ethic. I love what he's presented with AEW. I think he's one of the best wrestlers right now. I think he has a mind like his dad, a creative mind. He understands storytelling, and one of my all-time favorite matches was the match from Double or Nothing with his brother, which I thought was just a little over a year ago in Vegas. That was one of my all-time favorite matches, and I was lucky enough to be in attendance for that, and even actually be able to talk to Cody right after that match, and I appreciate what he's doing. Yeah. And I know that pro wrestling has a really bright future because of people like Cody Rhodes.
Of course. And I agree with you with that match with Dustin from last year. That match, I mean, obviously I watched it from home, but that match, I don't think for the first time in a while, it got me like I had goosebumps and I felt like a little emotional because of even the build of Dustin to that match. We hadn't seen, the last we saw of him was Goldust in WWE. And now he's being built up as, this is the last ride and all this stuff. And it was, I don't know, it was like an emotional roller coaster, that whole match. And then at the end with, saying they're going to tag together. It was just, that I think is what sold me on the AEW product.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because AEW, I think, was just about on the verge of getting to that next level.
Yeah.
And I think a big key to that was the show that they were going to have in Newark at the end of March, that Blood and
Ready
Guts.
for that show.
Yeah, and it was going to be their biggest crowd ever for an AEW show, their first time on, in New York, New Jersey area. And I know that was close to being sold out. It would have been sold out by the time the bell rang for that show. And I think the debut of Matt Hardy would have been a lot different if it would have happened on that show. Yep. And I really think it would have taken AEW to that next level. And unfortunately, it never happened. And hopefully one day we'll have that show. I feel really bad. I wish they were able to. I wish I was, because I know for me, as we talked about with New Jersey and some of the big shows, like that would have been, I'm sure, one of my favorite shows ever. To be able to be at an AEW Dynamite in New Jersey at the Rock, sold out crowd. My brother, who's not a wrestling fan, I got him a ticket and he was going to come. So I know there was going to be a lot of LaGreca heads in the audience that night. That I know for a fact. So it's unfortunate that didn't happen, but I think AEW has adjusted well to this pandemic era of pro wrestling, which I don't think anyone's a fan of, but we're finding a way to work through it.
Of course. And, from that match, in a way being canceled that they had for, what was it, Blood and Guts in Jersey? We got the Stampede match from, which, there was a lot of positive and negative to that match. I enjoyed that match. Real wrestling fans, I think, enjoyed that match. But I was so looking forward to that event. I went on to get the tickets when they had the whole countdown that it was releasing, having their debut in this, area of the country. I didn't get tickets, and my buddy's like, "Oh, I got 2 tickets." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like my saving grace there. And then it turns out it got canceled. But I'm sure when everything kind of goes back to, I don't know what normal is anymore. When it goes back to what it was before, I'm sure the company will come over here and do a big show to kind of make up for it. At least I'm hoping.
Yeah, it's the one thing. Like, I've been able to adjust pretty well to like the world that it is now. Like you just said, whatever this new normal is going to be.
Yeah.
But the one thing that it's almost impossible to replace is being at a live wrestling show and being in the audience. And I love it more than anything in the world. Like, 2 of my favorite things to do is to go see wrestling and to go to a concert. And like both those things have been taken away. Like I can adjust to a lot, but I love being around people. I love like, like when I talk about the Busted Open Nation, I'm not joking. Like, like at our 10-year anniversary party to see hundreds of fans, like that, that's just that feeling of I'm a part of something. And I love stuff like that. And there's nothing that can replace that. And I'm hoping that, someday soon we'll be able to get back there again. And I think what it will do is it'll make people appreciate it more as well.
Well, I think we're seeing that now because all the other sports are kind of on pause. The seasons haven't started, but wrestling is continuing. So I think there's a lot more eyes. At least I hope that there are a lot more eyes on wrestling right now, because that's really the only sport that's, continuing. I know I have friends that, were not wrestling fans and who are huge MLB or, whatever fans. They don't have it right now. They need some sort of sport outlet. And I say, turn on Monday Night Raw, turn on, Dynamite. And now they're asking me questions like about the characters and the storyline. So I see how the development is there, the potential is there. And I don't know. I think that, like what you said, there's a bright future, for pro wrestling from here.
I hope so. And I think pro wrestling's affected more by not having a crowd than anything else, because, you watch baseball, like if you watch a Yankee game, half the seats behind home plate, are empty because they've outpriced the fans. So like the only time you see the fans is with a foul ball or a home run. Other than it's focused on the field, and it's the fans aren't really a part of a game. Same thing with a football game.
Yeah.
When a football game is happening, it's focused on the field. You really don't see the fans. Pro wrestling, you see the fans at all times. I mean, the WWE and AEW have the fans lit. So they're a part of the show more than anything else. So I think we've taken the biggest hit by not having fans. But at the same time, like you said, because the way it's structured, we've never had to stop or be put on pause, which is always great.
Exactly. And I think with what we're seeing now, especially with, WWE being out of the Performance Center, I now like the angle of the camera where the back is the ramp. We didn't have that before. I don't know if that's going to go back to normal when we were able to have live crowds. But for me, I love that angle of the camera. When you see someone running down, it's different from seeing from the corner from what we saw before. You see him, come down, from right in front of you. It feels, I don't know. I feel more like it's more personal that way. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but there's a lot of
like Bully says on the show, it's like the Ring of Honor camera, because Ring of Honor always used that. But like you asked me how I started watching wrestling in Georgia Championship Wrestling, like that. I grew up on studio wrestling. I grew up on wrestling where there was basically just 50 people around the ring. Like there were 2 rows of chairs around the ring, and that was the fans in attendance. I didn't grow up on the arena wrestling. So, for me, it's not that big of an adjustment. It took a while because you're used to seeing an arena full of people, but, I never had a problem, watching studio wrestling. So, it's kind of just back to that format again.
Of course. And, I grew up in the 90s, so I had, that attitude era of wrestling. So when I would go to events, as a kid, those are the type of events I went to, the stadium events. But now, being a fan of, Impact and NWA, where there is a smaller crowd, or like you said, a studio audience, I like that too. So the fan thing doesn't really affect my position on the show. I mean, on Raw and SmackDown, it's a little different because they kind of feed, the promos that we see are typically made to feed off the crowd. And now we have them, angling in on the faces of superstars for that home reaction. But if you look at Impact or before with NWA, that wasn't the case.
Yeah. So like you said, but like with Impact, it's an easy transition. NWA, if that ever comes back, and I'm sure it will, it won't be that big of a it really isn't.
Yeah.
AEW and the WWE has been, are really the only 2 shows to me that have really been impacted by the loss of the crowds.
Of course. Now, I want to ask you, because you've interviewed everybody under the sun when it comes to pro wrestling. Do you have a favorite guest or someone that you've interviewed that's, you could say that was my favorite or most memorable guest?
There's a ton. Ric Flair, obviously, anytime I get the opportunity, Ric Flair is my all-time favorite. So being able to speak to Ric Flair, even now, is still always a thrill. We had The Undertaker on during, just right around the debut episode of The Last Ride, which I thought was phenomenal. That was the first time we ever had him on, so that was great. I mentioned I grew up on Georgia Championship Wrestling. The first ever wrestler I ever saw wrestle was Tommy Wildfire Rich. So being able to interview him was a thrill. There's so many phenomenal interviews that I'm really proud of and happy with. So yeah, but those are probably some of the highlights for sure. And my favorite, the favorite show was our 10-year anniversary show last year, where we had, they had to, horribly enough, they had to turn people away because we filled the room. We had 700 people in attendance. So that show, and Jim Ross and Eric Bischoff, Nick Aldis, NWA champion, was all part of that show. So that was like a big thrill for me, sure.
Wow. And especially like what you said, having The Undertaker on, I don't think he's really done interviews, really, right? I mean, not that
he did a few interviews for The Last Ride.
Yeah.
But before that, he didn't do any interviews at all. Another great interview was Shawn Michaels. We had Shawn Michaels on for almost the whole hour. He was fantastic, Shawn Michaels. So, as an old school fan, a lot of the older wrestlers that I grew up watching kind of pop me a little bit more than some of the newer wrestlers. But every time Jericho's on, he's always great as well. So
yeah. And I know that you have, or everybody knows that you have Bully, you have Tommy. How did you guys, or how did they get onto the show? That's kind of what I'm trying to get to. How did they kind of make their debut on the show?
Well, all three of them were guests prior to them being hosts. So Mark Henry, as I said earlier, he's been a fan of the show since day one. So I've been having conversations with Mark as early as WrestleMania 32 in Texas, where him and I met and we had a meeting, and I told him, I said, there'll be a place for you whenever you retire and decide to get into broadcasting. So we've had discussions early on, him and I have had. Tommy, always a guest on the show, always great with his time. He was actually doing fantasy sports. He did a fantasy sports show, and then he was a fan of the show, so that was an easy transition. And then with Bully, him and I were kind of having a Twitter discussion about Okada and Omega from Wrestle Kingdom 11.
Yeah.
And then it became a telephone conversation. And then I was like, wow, this would be great for the air. And then it became an on-air conversation, which led to him being on the show. And I'm very, very happy with Mark and Tommy and Bully on the show. I think all three of them are fantastic, but all three of them are very, very different. But I really think they've brought a dynamic to the show that I could never replicate.
No, I agree. They definitely are all different styles. And that's great to have on the show, because some days you'll have Mark and it's a different perspective. Now you have Dreamer, which is a different perspective. And then you have Bully. Like, for example, I think you and Bully, I mean, that's that tag team dynamic you guys have is one of the best I think I've ever seen in radio, to be able to bounce off, completely different thoughts on completely different stances and make it entertaining and add the storytelling and get your thoughts out there. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah, and Conrad has kind of followed the formula of doing a different show 5 days a week with different hosts, and most people would probably say that the best one he has is with Bruce Pritchard. But if you asked him what the most fun show is, it's probably Tony Schiavone. With Bully Bully breaks it down. He's amazing at breaking stuff down, and I have fun with Bully too. Don't get me wrong. We have a really good time. Tommy's kind of like my brother from another mother. Like him and I are like, we share the same brain.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're both longtime wrestling fans, and we're when we're not doing the show, we're watching wrestling, and we text each other all the time about what we're watching. And then Mark is kind of like my best friend. I have a best friend that's extremely similar to Mark, like his sense of humor and when I do the show with Mark, I don't need to we don't have any topics. We just bullshit and laugh and joke and stuff. So, and we just have fun. And I think the dynamic between the three of us is just so different. So it's just like the wrestling in general. Like, if you don't like the Bully show, I'm sure you'll like the Tommy show or the Mark show. If you don't like the Mark show, I'm sure you'll love the Bully show. I think we kind of give a different perspective each and every day.
And I think that's what's the most interesting part to the show, is because, you don't know what exactly you're going to get, because there's always different, perspectives coming in. You don't know what Bully's going to say. You don't know what Mark's going to say. And I kind of have to throw this out there. But by the way, Tommy Dreamer's promo from this week on Impact, I think probably one of my favorite that I've seen promo-wise from anyone in, I don't know in how long. That promo, I was just like jaw dropped, just watching that with the blood, and it was just it was a thing of beauty, really.
And I think that because there was some truth to it too.
Yeah.
And we talked about it on Thursday on Busted Open, where Tommy mentioned Moose to me, and I love Moose. I think Moose is ultra talented, but I don't think he's really been able to take himself to the next level. I thought Moose by now would just be dominating Impact. So I think there's a lot of truth to what Tommy was saying. And I think always, Bully says this on the show all the time, the best wrestling is where there's some realism in it. And I think there was some realism behind that promo that Tommy gave on Tuesday night.
I think that's what really got me too, because you can feel – I felt like the authenticity, like from the words he was using and just, the tone, everything. I was like, oh, wow, this is, there is some truth to this coming out right now. And I think that's really what got me too. It was just it was amazing. And that, again, Impact Wrestling, putting on Tommy Dreamer, to put on to give a promo like that. Would this happen in WWE today? Would you see it?
No, you wouldn't see anything like that. And I think also too, like giving Deonna Purrazzo the avenue to kind of do it, Jordan Grace to give her a mic, you're seeing it more and more. A lot of their younger talents, like sink or swim. You're given the opportunity. Now you got to make the most out of that opportunity.
Yeah. I kind of want to jump to what we saw last night with Fyter Fest and Great American Bash. What are your thoughts overall from both shows? And we can kind of, for whatever time we have left, we can kind of just talk about your thoughts on that. Because, to me, there were so many things that stood out that were so different. So I kind of wanted to get your perspective on what we saw.
I love both shows. I think from beginning to end, I might give the edge to AEW, though I thought the best match was on NXT, and I preferred the main event on NXT as well. Yeah. Like the Timothy Thatcher, Oney Lorcan match, to me, that was the match of the night. That match was awesome. And that's a match you could have had in any era. That was fantastic. I love the story coming out of the main event with NXT. And I actually love the Rhea Ripley, Robert Stone and Aaliyah. I thought that was hilarious. And Robert Stone he's a true talent. I love him.
Yeah.
And then with AEW, I didn't think there was a bad match. There really wasn't. And I think the star of AEW was actually the commentating. And an MVP might have even been Penelope Ford. I thought, she did a tremendous job last night. So I really, really loved both shows. The ratings are out. NXT just edged out
Saw that.
AEW, but AEW had that 18 to 35 viewers. So we got a true ratings war going on between AEW and NXT, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, that to me is the most exciting part, is how close they get sometimes with the ratings. Being I was a little kid when the Monday Night Wars were happening, and to go back and watch the footage, it's kind of one of those moments where I'm like, I wish I was involved in that. I wish I was a part of that. And now, being older, I kind of am with the Wednesday Night Wars, so to say. So that is really cool to see that that kind of back and forth play out. For me, honestly, like you said, I have to agree. AEW top to bottom was a better show. NXT for me felt like just a regular NXT show with some upgrades. We did have a strap match. We did have a different set, and it was. But NXT, the Great American Bash, was only advertised last week. They were strung together to kind of counter AEW, and it's unfortunate. I wish AEW was on another night because I think it would have a much bigger viewership. Yeah, and it wouldn't be compared to NXT. But hey, if it makes both shows better and there's competition, that's good for everyone. I wish there was another show up against Raw on Mondays that could make that show a little bit more bearable. Exactly. And back to AEW, like you said with Penelope Ford, that was one of the matches that I was like, all right, I kind of know what we're getting with the women's division in AEW. Penelope Ford, to me, I thought was going to job that match. I didn't think, to give her that opportunity was awesome to see. I didn't think that they were going to be able to, give us what we got last night. I was like, that to me surprised me. And, the back and forth and the length of the match. And, like you said, MVP is, Penelope Ford. That match really stood out to me a lot. The Timothy Thatcher and Oney Lorcan match, best match of the night, but there was really no build up to that match, so I didn't know what to expect. I feel like it was just see on the show.
I didn't think that was a match that we would be talking about, but that match was so physical and And Bully said it on the show today, and I didn't notice it until he said it, but like every move that they made meant something. The chops, usually we hear the chop, it's woo, and then there's a 5 second, and then you get a return chop.
Yep.
They used the chops to set up another move. They set up the chop to stun you, so then they could go for the leg or go for the arm bar or knock you off your feet. Like there was a reason for the chop, not just the effect of giving a chop so you could hear it across the room. It's to actually do what a chop was intended to do, which was stun you momentarily so you can counter something. So I thought they did a wonderful job. Very physical match between those two. Timothy Thatcher's awesome. And I thought the vignettes with Timothy Thatcher leading up to that match last night on NXT was really good too. So
that whole wrestling school thing that he has going,
yeah,
I know that is.
But that's old school because you hear the stories of like, Stu Hart and Bob Roop like stretching guys,
Exactly.
in the ring. And that's what Timothy, he's stretching guys, So I thought that was awesome.
And I also love about him too, he hasn't fixed his front teeth yet. So it kind of gives more to like that character. Like, he's just a badass and you're going to get a whooping, For me, I think the one match that I was excited to see that I was kind of disappointed with it was Cody and Hager. I thought the match overall was great, but the finish was kind of confusing to me. The inclusion of Hager's wife, who's not, she's been on, but not really featured. So I don't know if she would be able to get physical. But that was the point I was like, I don't know about this.
Well, we did the comparison, right? Like in that main event with Io Shirai, and listen, Bayley was interfering outside, so Sasha Banks was getting some advantages. So you understand why Asuka came out to kind of counter it. The only thing you saw was from Hager outside of what he was doing in the ring was Hager's wife slapping Cody in the face. That doesn't justify interference from Arn Anderson and Dustin Rhodes. Like it doesn't balance out at all. Like the Bayley Asuka balances itself out.
Exactly.
But a slap in the face from Hager's wife doesn't deserve like Dustin Rhodes coming out and decking Jake Hager. Like it's a little bit over the top for me. And then like Jake Hager, knocking out the referee. Now, obviously they're setting for something up down the road, but there was a lot going on in the last 30 seconds of that match last night.
Yeah. And it happened really fast too, which was like, what caught me off guard because you saw Dustin come down, he hit Hager or whatever happened, and then Hager hit like some sort of rock bottom on Cody, and then it was I was like, I don't know what just happened. He rolled him up or what was that? And the altercation with Hager's wife is to me, I think, a typical interference. When someone's at ringside, we see it a lot. With the manager type stars outside the ring, but to have Arn get involved, which we've seen before in Cody's matches, but where did like the whole Dustin thing? I know Dustin had a feud with Hager before, but is that like, I guess it's continuing? I'm not really sure where.
No, if like Santana and Ortiz were outside the ring, I could understand a lot more.
Yeah,
Dustin Rhodes coming out, but the way it was set up, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. I still thought the match was very good, but obviously they're setting something up for down the road, maybe even possibly next week. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I mean that to me was that match was fantastic, especially Cody coming out, his shirt with the Great American Bash font.
Great American Bash shirt, that's that. I thought not a lot of people caught that, but that was the old school Great American Bash logo. So I popped for that too.
I caught it like a little after, like when he was on the ring post, kind of posing, and I was like, wait, that looks really familiar. And then it just clicked, and I was like, wow, that is, that's those little touches like that is what gets me, especially with Cody and AEW.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. I do want to talk about also what we saw. I'm not really what I want to talk about, but a moment that I think a lot of people are talking about, Taz's comments, with the sloppy shop and all that stuff. What did you think about all those?
It's a dig, man. It's a dig. Like, listen, I've been very outspoken about that. I thought it was a little bit of a low blow to use the Great American Bash. That's Cody's dad's creation. And even though they own it, you know, like I always say, just because you have the power doesn't mean you have the right. So, like, you own that name. You know, to counter Cody with something that his dad created, I think is lowbrow. And the WWE doesn't need to do that. They set the standard. So, you know, like, you know, Cody coming out with the Great American Bash logo on his shirt and Taz making that comment. Hey, man, if you're going to fire a salvo, you got to expect the salvo to be fired back. Yeah. So I don't have any problem with it. And again, it creates controversy because now this is a war. MJF mentioned it at the beginning of the show last night. It's a war between these two shows. Yeah. Now, you're not going to touch the WWE. The WWE is more than just Wednesday nights. But AEW, what AEW can hang their hat on is they have the 18 to 35-year-old. Yep. You know, if you look at NXT, they got the fan over 50. You don't want the fan over 50. Fan over 50 is not going to be there in 20, 25 years. Yeah. The fan that's 18 to 35, you're going to have them for the next 20, next 30 years. Plus, you're going to get the kids of that, you know, of that 18 to 35-year-old. Yep. So AEW is in a very, very good position. Did NXT win the ratings war last night? Yes. But they're dominating in that 18 to 35-year-old. And I know, coming from radio, as long as I've been in radio, you want, especially TV, you want 18 to 35. You don't give a shit about the over 55. So AEW is, even though the number might be bigger with NXT for this week, AEW has the number that they want, and that's 18 to 35.
I have to agree with that. I mean, we're seeing, you know, the type of, you know, matches that we're seeing. NXT, you see more of those, like what we saw with Lorcan and Thatcher. You know, we're seeing more of a wrestling style, old school feel. Where AEW, you know, I'm popping more for AEW matches. You know, yeah. And I personally, because I've been a fan of WWE for so long, I know this is a thing with a lot of fans too. You're loyal to WWE, you know, and it's weird to have other alternatives, you know, but you can like them too. That's a big thing with the fans too. They always go, you know, back and forth with this, you know, negative, you know, the negative words that are shared on social media. You can like both. You know, there's things I love about NXT. There's things I hate about NXT. Same thing goes for AEW and all the other companies too. That doesn't mean, you know, you have to bash somebody or, you know, whatever we see on I don't know. There's a lot of stuff.
I think that whole thing is silly, being loyal to one company. That's silly. Yeah. Like, to me, it's like, you know, when I was younger, I watched everything. I watch everything now. I'm going to judge it from what I'm not going to – there's no loyalty there. Well, I don't get it. Like, it's not like, you know, you're a baseball fan, you're loyal to the Yankees, or you're a football fan, you're loyal to the New York Giants. Like, all right, those are your teams. I get it. You're loyal to them. But, like, pro wrestling, it's like WWE is giving you a lot of shit, man. Like, you know, like, don't you want competition? Don't you want an alternative? You know, watch it. To me, watch everything. To watch everything and make the judgment on your own of what show you think was better than the other. I don't understand the WWE. I'm loyal to pro wrestling. I'm not loyal to one particular show or one particular brand.
Exactly. And, you know, when I put it on social media where I'll say, you know, Impact this week was great. And then I'll get, you know, the WWE marks, sort of say, that come at me and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, you can watch everything and like it. You just because, you know, and I always say that because I grew up watching WWE doesn't mean I'm only gonna watch WWE. You know, there's so many other things out there that I like too. I just never understood that.
Yeah, you're only hurting yourself by doing that. You're just gonna miss out on a lot of good wrestling. That's all.
It's like a closed-minded, you know, perspective on that. The last thing I want to talk to you about. I know you had your beef with MJF, and I know it's like a touchy thing with you. I had it too with him, not as, you know, what you experienced with him. I asked him on Twitter, you know, just whatever. I tweeted him just like I tweeted you. How do I get MJF to come on the angle? and he quoted the tweet, and he wrote, "You don't." And I had Taz commenting on there, and Shane Helms, and it was the whole thing. And I have people telling me, "Oh, you got burned by MJF." I'm like, really, guys? Like, this is, to me, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I know it's pro wrestling. I know it's, not personal. How have you resolved your issues with him and everything that kind of went?
I actually haven't spoke to him at all. I know it's been a long time since we spoke. So, and to kind of follow up from what you just said, like, you're saying that it's pro wrestling. That's true. But let me tell you, and I'm being completely honest when I say this. This isn't like for the show, and this isn't like just to enhance it. He's like an asshole. Like, he's not a good guy.
Yeah.
So Cody, obviously we have the band and stuff like that, but I respect and I do love Cody's work. MJF is not a good guy. Like, he really is an asshole. So, like, he wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. So, like, he's not like, it's not, I have private conversations with MJF. I saw him at StarCast. He told me to go fuck myself. So it's you try to be professional, but he's not a good dude at all.
Yeah, I kind of picked up on that too, because I see, like, for example, he was on TMZ, flipping off a little kid, and at first I'm like, oh, this is just for the character, and it's not just one instance with this guy. It's like a repetitive nature in a way.
No, he's an entitled kid that has had a silver spoon in his mouth in his entire life, and he just feels like everything should be handed to him. Yeah. So he thinks that everybody's less than him.
Yeah.
So,
and you kind of see that play out on AEW, Dynamite, how, like we saw last night, and I know that he's undefeated, or, he has 2 losses on there technically, that he hasn't been pinned. Do you see him, holding a title there?
Sure. I see him being one of the best heels in pro wrestling.
Yeah,
I think he might be, other than Randy Orton. I think he might be the best heel in pro wrestling.
And I have this debate, and I like how you just brought up the heel aspect. I have this debate with people all the time. People say the best heel in wrestling right now, MJF. The best heel in wrestling right now is Randy Orton. People say the same about Baron Corbin. There's a different style of that heel character. For me, Baron Corbin is the best heel, if you're a kid. That's just my opinion. He's not going out there and saying the stuff MJF is saying, but he's getting boos from the kids. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's different. It's different, but nobody's cheering Baron Corbin. Nobody's cheering MJF. Nobody's cheering right now Randy Orton, especially like with this thing. That's the key. Like, I think lately, a lot of people, it's the cool thing to cheer for the heel.
Exactly.
But if you're truly a heel, you don't get cheered at all. And I think those are 3 examples of guys that don't get any cheers.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree there. And it's the debate I always have with people, because they're saying, no. MJF is the best, or Corbin, or it's just an ongoing debate. But I love talking about pro wrestling. I know you'd like talking about pro wrestling.
I want to thank. I do it every day.
I do want to thank you for coming on here and talking about your career and talking about pro wrestling. Is there anything else you want to say to any fans that are listening, or anything that you really, or about pro wrestling really, to anybody who's listening?
Well, no. If I can, I just obviously listen to Busted Open on Sirius XM Monday through Friday, 9 to noon on Sirius XM channel 156. If you don't subscribe to Sirius XM, you could always get a free version of Busted Open. Just subscribe to the Busted Open podcast, available on Pandora and Apple Podcasts. Just you get you get the 45-minute version of the show every day. Plus, there's some exclusive content that you can't even get on Sirius XM. So even if you subscribe and listen, definitely subscribe to the Busted Open podcast. Make sure, if you have Sirius XM, to download the app. We have video of our interviews that are on the Sirius XM app. And then for me, I have 7 different styles of t-shirts that you can get on Pro Wrestling Tees. And there's a sale going on right now for the 4th of July, 20% off. Just put in the code America, and then you buy a Dave LaGreca t-shirt. And you could also get cameos at the very, very cheap price of $25 a cameo. So
awesome.
I'll do LaGreca. I'll do whatever you want. LaGreca rants, whatever you want. $25 cameo. So
I gotta tell you, my dad loves the LaGreca rants, man. He's always telling me all the time. He's like, you gotta somehow get LaGreca rants.
Well, there you get the $25. I'll do a LaGreca. I'll do a rant on your dad.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I do want to thank you for taking the time to do this. It means a lot to me. Good luck with your move. I know you said you're moving in 2 weeks.
Thanks, man.
You said you're staying in New Jersey, correct?
Oh, yeah. I'm never leaving New Jersey.
Of course. Now that I'm back here from Florida, I don't think I'm ever leaving either. So I think.
Yeah, wait till the first harsh winter comes and you might be thinking about it a little bit differently. But no, I'm Jersey. So, and no, man, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for the invite. And this was a lot of fun, man.
Thanks, man.
Definitely. It was cool talking wrestling with you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch.
All right. Sounds good, brother.
Thanks, man. Stay safe and have a good day.
You too.